The hidden room in my attic watches me sleep. Part 1. The new house on Hollow Pine Drive. It started the day we moved into the old house on Hollow Pine Drive. It was a quiet cul-de-sac nestled against a wall of blackened trees. My wife and I were looking for a place to restart, a house with history, character. What we got was more than we bargained for. The realtor never mentioned the attic. In fact, we didn't even notice it during the walkthrough. But the first night, I heard creaking overhead, not the house settling, distinct footsteps. Measured, intentional. The access hatch was above the guest bedroom closet. When I pulled it down, cold air fell like breath on my neck. The attic was empty, except for a single child's rocking chair facing the wall. I chalked it up to nerves. Old house noises, imagination. But the next morning, the chair had moved. It now faced the opening. Part 2. The Watcher in the Walls. Strange things escalated slowly. My wife, Julia, heard whispers in the vents. Our dog refused to enter the guest bedroom. At night, I would wake to scratching behind the walls, low and rhythmic, like someone carving slowly with a nail. One morning I found dozens of Polaroid photos scattered across the attic floor. They were all of our bed. Taken at night, the perspective changed slightly in each frame, as if someone were crouching in the attic above our room, moving inch by inch, watching. I set up a camera, a motion detector, a trapdoor alarm. That night, the alarm never went off, but the camera recorded 7 hours of footage of someone standing still just inches above us, bare feet and long, bony legs swaying in the dark. We called the police. They searched the house. Nothing. But the attic? They wouldn't enter. One officer muttered, "Some doors don't stay shut," and left. Part 3. Beneath the floorboards. Desperate, I tore up floorboards, tore open the vents. Every nail seemed rusted from within, as if the house itself was resisting. Then we found the passage, behind a false wall in the basement, narrow, lined with torn wallpaper and stained children's drawings. A single bulb swung from a wire, barely lit. The air was colder than winter. And at the far end, a door. It opened into a chamber beneath the attic. Impossible. A reversed room, mirrored, decayed. Our bed, flipped upside down on the ceiling. The same furniture, but rotting. Hanging light bulbs that flickered backward. In the center, a man. But he wasn't moving, not breathing, just watching through a pane of broken glass. He looked like me, but older. And he smiled. When I blinked, he was gone. Part 4. The Final Descent. We tried to leave. Every time we packed, things vanished. Our car wouldn't start. The GPS glitched and rerouted us back to Hollow Pine Drive. Neighbors said the house was abandoned for decades, but we'd seen lights in windows before we moved in. That night, Julia sleepwalked into the attic. I found her rocking in the child's chair, whispering, "He's watching. We're just the latest ones." I screamed. She looked at me, but her eyes weren't hers. I dragged her out, locked the hatch, boarded it shut. But the next morning, the boards were gone, and the chair was empty. Now I sit alone, writing this by candlelight. I hear breathing above me. And I know, when I stop writing, when I finally sleep, he'll come down. And I'll be next. Just like the others. Because the man beneath the attic doesn't walk. He waits. And watches. Always. She waited at the end of the path. Part 1. The Whispering Woods. It began with a whisper. Not the kind you hear with your ears, but the kind that echoes deep inside your bones, soft, ancient, familiar. Henry Clay, retired and recently widowed, stood at the edge of the forest behind his childhood home. He had returned to Clearwater Hollow for the first time in over 40 years. The trees hadn't changed. Tall pines loomed like cathedral columns, their tops swaying gently in the late autumn wind. A narrow dirt path, overgrown and mossy, stretched into the shadows. Henry remembered the path. Everyone in Clearwater did. Don't walk it alone, the old folks would say, always with the crooked smile that never reached their eyes. As a boy, Henry had dared to explore it once, with his best friend Thomas. They turned back after 20 steps, when the woods began to hum. Not buzz, not chirp, hum, like something alive was listening, breathing. Now, at 74, with no job and no one waiting for him back home, Henry didn't mind being alone. He took a deep breath, adjusted his wool scarf, and stepped onto the path. The pines closed behind him like a curtain. The air changed. Gone was the crisp breeze of early November. The forest was still. The sound of leaves crunching beneath his boots echoed louder than it should have. Henry walked slowly, hands in his coat pockets, eyes scanning the way forward. There was peace in walking, even in these strange woods. His mind, always so noisy these days, began to quiet. Thoughts of Eleanor, his wife of 50 years, drifted like fog. She had always told him stories were the best way to understand the world. Even the scary ones, she used to say, especially the scary ones. After about 10 minutes, Henry noticed something odd. The trees ahead were thinning, and the smell changed. No longer damp earth and pine needles. It smelled like cinnamon and wood smoke. He stepped out into a clearing and froze. Before him stood the exact replica of his childhood home, not the one he'd inherited, but the first one, the little cabin they'd lived in before moving closer to town. It had burned down when he was 6. Yet here it stood, untouched by time. Smoke curled gently from the chimney. A single candle glowed in the front window. Henry's heart beat heavy in his chest. He approached slowly. The front steps creaked beneath his boots. He raised his hand to knock, then stopped. The door opened by itself. Warmth spilled out into the forest, and the scent of cinnamon grew stronger. Inside was silent, but not empty. A woman sat at the wooden kitchen table, peeling apples. She wore a faded blue dress and her hair was pinned up in the style of the 1950s. Henry gasped. "Ma?" She looked up. It was her, Mary Clay, dead nearly 50 years, just as he remembered her from his earliest memories, cheeks round and rosy, hands stained with flour, humming some forgotten lullaby. "Come in, Henry," she said. Her voice was exactly the same. Henry staggered inside, dizzy. What is this?" She smiled softly. "You've come back. I always said you would." "But how? You died. I was at your funeral." Mary placed the peeled apple into a bowl. "There are places in this world, Henry, where time and memory twist like roots underground, where the past doesn't stay buried." She looked up at him, eyes glinting like morning frost. "You're walking the path. It shows you what you left behind." Henry sat down slowly, his legs trembling. "I don't understand," he whispered. "You will," said Mary, standing now. "But not here, not yet." The house began to tremble gently. Dishes rattled in the cupboard. The walls rippled like a reflection on water. His mother leaned down, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "Keep walking, Henry. Don't stop, no matter what you see." And then, the house vanished. Henry fell backward onto pine needles, gasping. The clearing was empty. No house, no chimney, just trees. The wind had returned, cold, whispering. Part 2. The schoolyard and the stranger. Henry stood still in the clearing, his breath catching. The house was gone, his mother gone too. Only the path remained, winding deeper into the woods. Darker now. He walked. Time slipped strangely in the forest. Minutes felt like hours, and the sun no longer filtered through the trees. The shadows thickened. Henry followed the path as if under a spell, each step echoing with forgotten memories. Then, the wind shifted. He heard it. Children, laughter, the squeak of a swing, the thud of a rubber ball. Suddenly, the trees parted again, and before him stood a schoolyard. Faded hopscotch lines on cracked pavement. a metal slide glowing faintly in the dim light. And there, standing under a crooked tree, was Thomas. Thomas Wyatt, his best friend from age 9. Gone since 1961. Tommy? The boy turned, grinning. You're late. Henry stared. Tommy looked just like he had on the day he vanished, denim overalls. One strap broken, dirt smudged on his nose. I don't understand, Henry said. You do, said Tommy. You just forgot. He picked up a red rubber ball and tossed it to Henry. You remember what we did, right? Henry held the ball, hands trembling. The texture was right. The weight, the sound of wind through the school fence. You dared me, Tommy said. Henry's stomach turned. I dared you to walk the path. Henry whispered. I told you it was just a story. You said it didn't go anywhere. The wind fell silent. Henry's knees buckled. You went alone, and never came back. Tommy nodded. But I'm here now. So are you. I was just a kid. I didn't mean. It's okay, said Tommy, walking closer. You came to find me, didn't you? Henry reached out, then froze. Tommy's eyes weren't the same. They were hollow, not sad, empty, like polished stones. You're not real, Henry whispered. Tommy's smile faded. Keep walking, Henry, the boy said. You don't want to stay here. And like smoke, the schoolyard faded. Henry stood once more on the forest path, clutching the red rubber ball. It crumbled in his hand. Part 3. The Mirror Room. Henry walked faster now. The wind moaned through the trees like a choir of distant voices. His heart pounded. The air was thick with memory, damp with fear. He didn't know how long he had been walking when the next clearing appeared. This time, it was a house, but not one from his past. It was too clean, too modern, a black cabin with tall windows, all reflecting the woods. A fire crackled inside, though no chimney smoked. Against his better judgment, Henry stepped closer. The front door opened without a sound. Inside, it was quiet. The silence after sunset, a gentle horror tale for a foggy night. Fog Part 1. Arrival in Greywick. The train shuddered to a stop, beneath the soft hiss of the brakes and the distant screech of gulls. Clara Winslow stepped off the final carriage into a world wrapped in fog. The station was little more than a stone platform slick with salt and moss. A single lamp flickered above the arrival sign, Greywick Bay. The air smelled of brine, pine, and something else, something older. She had come alone, carrying nothing but a worn leather bag and the name of an inn, the Saltwind House. A letter had brought her here, one written in shaky, unfamiliar handwriting. Come home, Clara. The sea remembers what we forget. We need you before the silence becomes forever. She had no family in Greywick, at least none she could recall. Clara was 38, a travel writer by trade, orphaned young and raised in a boarding school. But something about the letter had pulled her here, like an old song half remembered, or a scent from a dream. She crossed the platform, boots tapping on old wood, and stepped into the town. Greywick Bay was a forgotten seaside village nestled into cliffs that bowed toward the Atlantic like grieving giants. The houses leaned into the fog, their windows shuttered and their chimneys silent. Salt crusted the walls like frost. Everything was quiet. Clara passed a bakery with a faded sign. An old man inside kneaded dough with deliberate, slow movements. He did not look up. She waved politely. He paused, but did not respond. She frowned. Maybe he hadn't seen her. Or maybe he didn't want to speak. At the edge of the harbor, the Saltwind House rose like a shipwrecked mansion. Weathered timber siding, a warped front door, and black shutters like closed eyelids. Clara knocked. The door opened slowly, revealing a woman in her 60s with silver hair braided neatly over one shoulder. You must be Clara Winslow, she said in a gentle voice. Come in, child. The sun's almost down. Clara stepped inside. The warmth and scent of dried lavender hit her immediately. I'm Meredith. I run the inn. Your room's ready, top floor. facing the sea. We don't have many visitors this time of year. Thank you, Clara replied. Strange weather. Meredith's face darkened. Greywick always has fog, especially after sunset. She hesitated. May I give you one small piece of advice? Clara nodded. After dark, Meredith said softly, don't try to talk to anyone in the village. And if someone speaks to you first, don't answer. Candle Part 2. The night below the bell. That night, Clara lay in bed beneath a heavy quilt, staring at the ceiling. The waves crashed distantly, muffled by the mist, and then midnight struck. A bell rang once from the old lighthouse on the northern cliff. She had seen it earlier, standing tall and unlit. Locals called it the widow's watch. The bell sounded again, then a whisper, not loud, just outside her window. She sat up, heart racing. Clara? The voice was low, hoarse, familiar. She crept to the window, drew the curtain. Outside, through the fog, stood a figure, a man, pale coat, no lantern. He looked up at her and smiled. Clara stumbled back. She knew that smile. She had seen it in a photograph from her orphanage file. The man was her father, dead since she was 3. Clara did not sleep. In the morning, she confronted Meredith. Last night, there was someone outside my room. I heard him speak my name. Meredith's lips went thin. You opened the curtain, didn't you? Clara swallowed. I thought I saw. Whatever you thought you saw, Meredith said, wasn't him. Clara's voice trembled, but it looked like. Meredith cut her off. That's how it begins. She poured Clara a cup of tea, hands trembling slightly. They come after sunset, when the fog is thickest. They wear the faces of those we've lost. They remember our names, but they are not who they seem. Clara stared. Why? Because silence protects us, Meredith said. If we speak, they know we see them. If we respond, they take more. Take more? Meredith turned away. There used to be 200 people in this town. Now there are 23. Crescent Moon Part 3. Letters in the Mist. Over the next 3 days, Clara explored Greywick in the daylight. She found no children, no dogs, no radios, no laughter. The townspeople nodded politely. Some smiled, none spoke. But each evening, just as the sun dipped into the ocean, the change was instant. Curtains were drawn, doors locked, lights dimmed. The entire town fell into utter, chilling silence. And then, the fog came. Thick, pale, alive. One night, Clara found a letter outside her door. Folded paper, her name written in sea dark ink. We're still here, under the waves, beneath your name. Come to the cliffs. The handwriting matched the first letter. And inside was a dried flower, sea lavender. Her mother's favorite, a flower not found in this part of the country. She followed the path. The cliffs were quiet. The lighthouse stood above her, its bell silent. The fog swirled around her ankles, pulling at her like a tide. Then, voices. They came from below, from the sea itself, chanting her name. Clara, soft, overlapping, like dozens of voices in a dream. She ran, back to the inn, back to her locked room. And that night, she dreamed of water, and a cradle, and her parents, standing in the tide, beckoning her closer. New Moon Part 4. The Truth Beneath Greywick. On the 7th night, Clara made her decision. She would ring the lighthouse bell. No one had done it in 30 years. The clapper was rumored to be rusted. But she had to know. Why the silence? Why her? She left at dusk. The fog rose quickly. The path to the lighthouse was narrow, crumbling, littered with sea glass and memories. Inside the tower, the stairs spiraled upward like a spine. Her flashlight flickered. Something moved behind her. She didn't look. At the top, the bell hung like a sleeping god. And beneath it, scratched into the wall in trembling lines, was her name. Over and over. Clara, Clara, Clara. She reached for the rope and pulled. The bell rang once. The sound echoed across the cliffs, and the silence below cracked. Voices rose from every corner of Greywick. weeping, laughing, begging, and from the mist, figures emerged. All the lost, children, fishermen, mothers, friends, their mouths moved, but made no sound. One by one, they turned to her. Clara fell to her knees. I hear you, she whispered, and for the first time, the fog lifted. Sunrise epilogue. The voice that broke the silence. In the morning, Greywick changed. Windows opened, doors unlocked. Someone laughed on the dock. The fog returned, yes, but softer now. Gentler. Clara stood at the cliff's edge, holding a letter in her hands. It was her own handwriting. Silence is not forgetting, it's remembering without pain. She had no memory of writing it, but somehow, she understood. And from then on, when the bell rang at dusk, the people of Greywick no longer turned away. They listened, they remembered, but they never spoke back. Not unless the voice was their own.